Almost like 15 lines down.
In Kufman Gimel?
Yeah. But time in a row, you have to yeah. So Truma so Truma.
Okay.
All right, like 15 lines down. All right, fine.
Let's do it.
Let's go. It sort of moves pretty quickly. Some of the math I'm not going to do, but we'll be able to vision the math. All right, so let's see what's going on here. Where do we leave off? So let's start from the Amar Rav Nachman. Let's start from as 3 lines from the top.
I'm here just the first.
3 lines from the top, and away we go. So we discussed this yesterday. The Amar Rav Nachman Hamazaka Uber Leikana. One who goes ahead is Mazaka. He gives over something to an Uber, a fetus, a child before it was born. Lo Kana does not acquire it all. He says, "I will give this, $100 when the child was born." Kana.
What was the last line?
Acquires. Kana. He says, no, never to a fetus. Even says when the baby is born, it is not acquired. No, they both, even when to a fetus acquires. All right, it's a big chiddush from Rav Sheshes. So I'm Rav Sheshes. How do we know that the time of the Brisa? Ger shemes, Liz was Yisrael. So let's say a ger died, he had a wife, and then all of a sudden, he did not. So shemes, then they say he was married, he got divorced, and then he died. So then everyone goes ahead and tries to, someone goes ahead and acquires his estate. And then they heard he has a son, right? His divorced wife, he has a son. Or that she was muberes. Then they have to go ahead and return it. They didn't acquire it because there's a fetus. So hichziru, right? So they have to return everything. Afterwards, then shama shemes. They heard beno. Then they heard that the baby died. Oh, shepilo, or she had a stillborn. Ishto hichzik shepila ishto. So hichzik b'shniya kana rishon leikana. The second person acquires it, not the first person. In other words, that if he went to go ahead and acquire it, and it turns out that he had a baby who was a fetus, and in the end, the child died at birth, right? Nevertheless, if whoever acquires it after that acquires it, not the person before, so you see that the fetus had some zechusim in the estate. Yeah. So you see, the Uber does go ahead and inherit it. So and if you think that a fetus does not go ahead and acquire anywhere, Kufman Beis Amud Aleph. Anywhere. Huh? Oh yeah. Kufman Beis Amud Aleph. Right. I was just telling where we were getting to. My bad. Yeah. So it's like honey. Right? Why do you have to do it a second time or somebody else? If the fetus doesn't do anything, then the fetus does nothing. He already acquired it once. Some Rabbaye. Yerusha, in any case, it's different. That's not giving a case to a fetus. This is also a chiluk we saw yesterday. Maybe this has to do with inheriting. Since inheriting comes automatically, maybe something which comes automatically, such as Yerusha, that there's shaykhs to the Uber, of the mother. But however, just to give a gift, maybe it's not a proof. And Rava says no. Shani Hasam dirafui marafid be'adayu meikara. In other words, when the person first, thank you. When the person first made a kinyan, he didn't do a kinyan. This is Vadai going to go ahead and acquire it, right? He might have a baby, he might not. So he his whole initial his initial acquiring of the item, right, was done like besuffic. So therefore, he didn't have a full 100% mindset to go ahead and do it, and that's why he didn't acquire it. That's why only after he did like besuffic. Only afterwards, therefore that kinyan works.
I don't understand Abayi's.
So Abayi would say.
I said it yesterday, but I'm not sure I got.
So does a fetus go ahead and acquire now? So maybe a fetus acquires something that it can acquire a Yerusha, right? Even while the father dies, while the baby is a fetus. Actually, we're soon to see 2 more cases like this, right? So maybe that baby has a shaykhus to the estate. Why? Because in order to inherit a Yerusha, you don't make a kinyan. right? It's automatic.
What happens?
So something that happens automatic, maybe that can go to an Uber, but to give a gift where a kinyan is required,
Got it.
it's a fetus, right? And Rava says, no, maybe the original dam was dam with suffix. So my benayu, what's nafkami between them? So ika benayu, sheshamu ba shemes v'loy mes. Maybe the guy actually heard that he had a baby, but the baby died, and then he made the first kinyan. So when he made that first kinyan, even though the baby was alive, he thought the baby was dead, and therefore he thought for sure vada I make it a kinyan. So v'loy mes v'yachar kachmes only afterwards died. So according to the first opinion, the Yerush Shani. So that would still pertain, right? So maybe that's the reason why it works in that case. But according to Rava, right, the guy, even though he was mistaken, he thought with certainty that he acquires it, and l'chayra, then he would acquire it. Then there'll be enough between Abaye and Rava. So Tashma, 5 lines at the bottom. I'm Kuf Ben Beis Amar Aleph. Tinak Ben Yom Echad Neichel Umanchil. A baby that's 1 day old can inherit and bequeath. However, Ben Yom Echad, so Ben Yom Echad Uber Lo, there's only a baby once it's born, but not a fetus. So the Gemara says, "I Homer of Sheshes." Neichel, where do we see over there? So we see that Uber does not. So Homer of Sheshes Neichel benichsei lahanchil lo achim minayin. So over here, what are we talking about? The reason why in this case, no, it's not a case of generally a case of Uber, right? So we'll say that. So it says Rav Shai says we're talking about a case. Let's say the guy has 2 wives. All right. Now, there's 2 wives, right? Rachel and Leah. Okay. Now Leah has Reuben and Shimon, and now he has other wife Rachel who's giving birth to Yosef. Right now, in this case, so if the mother dies, okay, then she wouldn't be inherited, right? Let's say, the mother. Rachel dies, she would be inherited by Yosef, okay. And if Yosef died, he would be inherited by his paternal brothers, by Reuben and Shimon, right? Those are his only relatives. So over here, if he's born, right, then his mother dies at childbirth. So only if he's born, the mother dies, he's born, and he inherits the mother, and then he died, and the baby dies at 1 day old, and then it goes over to the brothers. But if he dies as a fetus and the mother died, so we don't say that the baby, the fetus, inherited the mother who just died and bequeaths it over to his paternal brothers, the other 2 brothers. The Dafka ben Yom Echad of Uber Lo. My timer, what's the reason? Right? So you say, what's the reason why? Because in other words, it must be the reason why the fetus doesn't go inherit, because the fetus, if the mother died at childbirth, died first. Right? Then the son in this case does not go ahead and inherit, right, from his mother, because he was dead. In other words, if the baby died first, then he would never go inherit his mother who just died. Well, you say that the baby automatically died first. We've seen cases where that even after the death, the fetus from a dead mother moves around so it moves around, chickens. Right? Yeah, like any chicken. So that's the answer. Right? It's just like a tail of a lizard, right? Similar to that chicken, a tail of a lizard, right, will move around even after the death. So it doesn't show a sign of life. The fetus died first, and therefore the fetus never inherited anything. It's only if it's born, but right, it moves afterwards. It only moves afterwards because there's nerves or whatever it is that cause it to move, but it's not a show of life.
What if they delivered the child by coming open the belly of the mother?
So if the baby was alive for one moment, then the baby will be a neichel or manchil. Then the baby would inherit the mother.
Hold on, when you say alive, isn't that 30 days?
No. It says afilu yom echad. We said afilu yom echad.
Yeah.
Oh,
There might be other halachas nafkamina, but we said neichel manchil is afilu yom echad. And Marbre, the Rav Yosef Mishmei, the Rav Amar loymar shemai bechelek b'chayra. No, we're talking about a case of over here that when is the fetus comes into when do we say that a fetus affects something? No, the only satsa, excuse me, that dafka 1 day old is neichel manchil, but a fetus is nothing. So that has to do with Shemai b'chelik b'chayra. That has to do with the chelik of a firstborn. The dafka ben yom echad. About uber low, but dafka yom echad and uber not. My time, but what's the reason? So here's the case. There's two brothers, right? Ruvain and Shimon, and now there's Levi. All right. So Levi is born and then dies. So the question is, so there's a nafkamina, right? Whether Levi gets a portion, huh? So the father died. What's that?
Yeah.
We'll say
That's
that the father died before. Yes, right, correct. The father died. Jewish background. Yeah, right. Now we say this. So if the baby was born, right? So therefore the father. So so in this case, when the baby was born, so then over there it's considered to be neichel, to inherit, and then when the baby dies, the brothers bequeath it over to the other one. But now remember, if the baby, so there's Reuven and Shimon, right? So let's say it's Reuven and Shimon. So Reuven will get double of Shimon, right? Of the father's estate, because he's the Bechor. But if something is if Reuven and Shimon inherit something from their brother, they get a 1-to-1, not 2-to-1, right? So that's what it means. If the baby is born, then he has the chelik from the father, then the baby soon dies afterwards, then Reuven and Shimon inherit it 1-to-1. But if the baby was never born, right, then the baby never inherited, then therefore those assets, even though ultimately will end up by the two other brothers, those were never inherited by the brother, therefore everything goes 2-to-1 between Reuven and Shimon, and therefore a 1-day-old gets in a way to inherit the bequeath of the brothers, but not if it was a fetus. So my time, fine. Oh, Susan, I skipped it. So my time, what's the reason? So it says V'yoldulo, as he born to him, born to the father. That's the chelik of the b'chayra. Amar Rachman Adam, Mar Bereid Rav Yossi Mishmei Derava Ben Shanayla Leachar Misasav. A child, a son who was born after the death of his father. Einamait v'chelik b'chayra. He does not go ahead and diminish the amount of the bechayra, my time of the yoldu lo amrachman of a halakha, right? Because in other words, there has to be that with the chelik of the bechayra has to be alive when the father died, but the father never met the child, so therefore it would not go ahead, and he would not get a double portion of that. And Basura Masni Hachi, and so they taught that, however, these Masav learn a different way. Amar the Rav Yosef, Mishmei the Rava, Bechor Shenayla Leachar Misasaviv, a Bechor that was born after the death of the father. Let's say they were twin boys, right? Eino Naitel Pishnayim. The older brother does not get a double portion. My time, what's the reason? Right, because he's a Bechor. Right. But it has to be Bechor for somebody, so it's not the brother. Or it could be another scenario was he has two pregnant wives. And then they're both born after he died, right? So my time, so Yakir, one of the says Yakir to recognize the Yakir. He doesn't recognize them because he died before that they were born. Right. Well, they wait. Right. So my time, Yakir Rachmana V'Hilchasa. The Yaga. The all these cases. All these cases, the halach is like Mar Bereid Rav Yosef in the name of Rava. And Rabbi Yechon Hamazake Uber Loikana. One who goes ahead and tries to give a gift to a fetus Loikana Vim Taimar Mishnah Seino. Look at our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says once the Hanjaza works. Since it's his son, therefore the person does have full.
Well, it's like really because of
right,
because he can't do it to somebody else's kid, only to his own kids.
To his own. So then he's really
they allowed it.
Right. Yeah. So soon see the halachas like this. So Amar Le Shmuel the Rav China B'Dasa Puk Aisi Le Beyasar. Go ahead out and say this in front of 10 people. And go out and say it in front of them. Hamazak Luber Kana. What is Mazaka to the fetus is Kana. The Hilchasa, however, the halach is Hamazak Uber like the one who's Mazaka to Uber does not acquire. How would the Visi, a person said to his wife, Nixi Libni So let's say the guy, he's getting married for the second time. He knows this is the one, right? This first one was a mistake. This is the one. He says, your children that we'll have together, they'll inherit all my estate. So Asa Berek Harshisha, so his son from his first wife said, Dad, what about me? Samarle, Hahu Gavra, my Tiaviala, talks about himself, like a third person. And what should be of your other son, i.e., me? Samarle, Zil Kani, Tichad Nibra. You're right, good point. Go ahead and make a kinyan on that. Now, so,
What does that mean?
on the land. In other words, go make a kinyan on the land, and therefore, let's say the father has 3 sons in the future. So therefore, and he just gave everything to those 3 sons. So it'll basically give to 4 sons.
So the Torah is before. That's what Torah tells us.
So let's say there was a daughter. Let's say there was a daughter before. Right. Yeah. He just meant the older brother, the one who was already in existence before. Now, basically, he's making a kinyan on property given to fetuses before they're ever in existence, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's saying that they're engaged. He says it'll make a kid. So now,
Not even fetuses. She's not even pregnant.
right, exactly. And even if she was pregnant with one, obviously not the other, right? So he says, so now, so he says, go make a kid. Now, the fetus says she has 3 boys later on, 3 years later, she has other sons, right? By like honey, they're kati less new, because they're not around. What about high? Now, do we say that the one who's in existence maybe took a quarter of the assets, right? Because he was alive, he made a kinyan, and that technically would have been a gift to all of them, but that gift doesn't count. So maybe, right? So he would have ended up with 25% of the estate. So maybe he actually ends up with 25% of the estate, and that everything else is now divided by 4 between him and his brothers in the future.
How many brothers?
No, let's just say at the end. At the end, they're no, the guy dies, when the father dies.
Okay, so what if the father dies before the other 3 are born? Right.
No, we're talking about a case they were born. Then they're not going to be born, then he gets everything. Then he gets everything.
Yeah.
So the guy said it, the brother made the kinyan, the guy has 3 kids, right? We're just based on number. Let's say he has 4 kids, right? Whatever. Yeah, let's say he has 4 kids. Perfect. Besides older brother. So he's 4 kids later, then the father dies. So who gets the estate? So it should be divided in 5, right? That's what you think. But maybe the first boy who made a kinyan to be part of it, at that point when he made kinyan, got 20% of the father's estate. So therefore, there's only 80% left of the estate.
Right.
And maybe that 80% is divided by 5.
Yeah.
So that first brother would get the 20% he already got,
Right.
plus 1/5 of the 80%.
But when he's making the kinyan, is he making on a percentage or?
Right. He does to the land. He does something to land or whatever it is.
But it's for the
Whole
whole portion of
Of the estate. Right. All right. So right. It's out there. I agree with you. Right. Yeah. So unless they can Vitali b'makom b'banya. So Rabbi Avin, Rabbi Ma'ishiv, Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar is chalek Talia b'makom b'na. He does get a portion. And Rabbi Avov, Rabbi Chanina, Bar Papi, Rabbi Yitzhak Nachla, Damari, less chalek Vitalia b'makom b'na. He doesn't get a portion. He knows his whole thing was he's getting it through the fetuses. The fetuses don't work, so his kinyan through the fetuses, but the fetuses work since it was through them, so nothing should work. So Amalei Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Yirmiyah Kavasan is halacha like us, the second people, right? Or Huchza Kavasaiku, or like you guys. Amalei Pshita the Huchza Kavasa. It's obvious halacha like us, says Rabbi Avin. Why is that? Because we're older. Lav Huchza Kavasaiku, the Dardaki also, and it's not like you because you guys are the young whippersnappers. So Amalei. Me, because she's Italian. Well, I understand it's depending on age. What? Just because you're older, halachas like you, I tell you, Milsa. The time I tell you, Milsa. The time am I? What's the reason? So why do you say the reason? So he says Zil Gabai the Gabi the Rabbi Avin. Actually, go find Rabbi Avin. Now, Rabbi Avin, he was a member of the first older group. Right. So see what he says. Right. So he says. So he says, go to him and he'll go explain to you.
Now it's like an older person.
Right. So Bekarkish Bey Reisha B'Midrasha, and then he nodded his head in the base medrash, and also like obviously he said, fine, come. He asked him, Amarle, Ilu Amarle Kani Kechamar Mikani, right? He says, if you say acquire it like a donkey. Now donkeys do not acquire things. So acquire it like a donkey. Does a donkey acquire it? No, it does not. So too over here, the svara is the Svar is all off and it shouldn't acquire anything. Now he's being chayzer. He's saying actually the halacha is like the younger guys because that's the reason. The reason should be if you say acquire like this, the donkey acquires it, okay. But since a donkey doesn't acquire it, so you don't acquire it. Acquire like the fetuses. Since the fetuses don't acquire it, you should not acquire it. And where do we see that? The Itamar kani b'chomer like kana. We'll just get this one case. A little bit complicated, but a person says. Actually, the proof is complicated. So, if someone says, excuse me, someone says somebody else acquire it like a donkey acquires things like kana. That doesn't work. That's nothing, and that's our case here. Or this actually, you and a donkey go ahead and acquire together. So Rav Nachman Omar kana. So you actually get half. Rav Nuna Omar Lo Omar Klum. He hasn't said anything because since donkeys can't, you can't. But Rav Sheshes Omar kana hakol. Rav Sheshes says no. You actually acquire everything. You get your portion and the donkey's portion. So why is that? Amar Rav Sheshes menaming Allah. So what's my proof? The Tana of the Rabbi Rabbi Yossi Aimer ein locha mar bekishus ela penim yeshiva.
Nowadays, it's all my dog to acquire.
Right. Yeah. Well, that really works. Well, you can marry your dog, right? So we say over here. So there is no the bitterness of a gourd or a cucumber is in the middle. Ela penim yeshiva. Right. So I guess the outside is the nice part. And now, a person is not allowed to go ahead and be Tairem raw al yafa. You can't take good stuff or bad stuff. So let's say he takes the truma, a 1/50th for the other 49. Now, if it's a bitter one, he's doing raw so he's doing bad for good, right? That's the good crop. He's giving the bad crop to truma. So what does he do? So you take 1 to 1. But let's say the bitterness is not equal. So take a little more of a melon, the sweet part, and add that to the truma. All right. Now, but why is this case over here? Because basically what you're saying is you should acquire it. So am I at v'chomarhu? Right. In other words, it's really that which the bitterness of or basically the sweet part of the gourd is the truma on behalf of all the others, but it's also the bitterness accepting it. So it's like, and the bitter is not something that you really can take truma from. So what do you see over there? The way he told you to be mafresh, right, does work. You're combining good and bad. In other words, things that normally don't work, like the bitter, to take bitter truma does not work, but take the sweet truma does work. So you take the two of them together, it works together. Both of them work, right? So over here, we see ad v'chamor, it works everything, and everything is now considered to be already taken truma. So Gemara says, no, shani asan, miduraisa truma yalsahi. Truma works, whether bitter, not bitter. How do we know that person is turning me to Rala Yafa? Truma, so Truma. There's Truma's Truma. It says, do not bring up a sin upon yourselves, right? To take, right? I guess when you go ahead and take the parts from you, all right? When we take the bad parts, right? We made a kadosh. He says, right? But if it doesn't work, if it's ineffective, then where's the sin? There's no sin. It's like nothing. So we see the term in a row. So over here we see that taking that truma does work. So now, Rav Sheshes is not a good proof that you and a donkey acquire together that it is kana, because we don't know. You don't have a proof yet. We'll continue tomorrow with this conversation. But But in our case, like if